But anyways, it is 7 o'clock and I'm going to go ahead and begin. So I wanted to say welcome. Good evening, everybody. My name is Arthur Pearson and I am the CEO of the Roger Tory Peterson Institute. And I'm so honored and over the moon excited to be joined this evening by Ed Siriano and Jay Burney of Buffalo Audubon Society. And we're going to be sharing the program tonight. And I'm going to be doing the first half and setting the stage for them to bring it home about lights out Western New York, bird strikes, and light pollution. So before we get started, I want to do just a few housekeeping things, if I may. So if you haven't already, please mute yourself. So that way, if the dog's barking or if you're snacking on a snack, you're not disturbing your fellow Zoomsters. We'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. We also are recording the presentation tonight. And so if you do not want to have your face be a part of the recording, we respect that. So please just either turn off your camera or you can toggle off the screen and we'll just have your name there or whatever your handle is. And we'd appreciate that. So thank you very much. And this will be available on our YouTube channel. And we do get a lot of views on our YouTube channel. So we're excited to have this growing catalog of good programs. During the course of the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them into chat. And then at the end of the program, we will get to as many of those questions as we can. And I'm hoping that you do have some good questions because I think this is a really interesting and important topic. Just a couple other things. During the middle of the presentation, we're going to do a quick changeover. So in advance, we beg your patience and your pardon. So I'm going to stop my presentation, hand it over to Ed and Jay, and then they will continue on. So we're going to try to do that with pit stop speed and efficiency. And the last thing I wanted to do is just say thanks to all of you for your patience. This program was scheduled for last week and we had to postpone until this evening. So thanks for sticking with us and thanks again for being here this evening. And I think that's it. Jay, Ed, anything else to add before we get going? Okay, I see vigorous head shakes, so I'm just going to jump in. So again, welcome to the program this evening. And I'm going to go out on a limb and conjecture that pretty much everyone on the call knows who Roger Tory Peterson did. And I'm going to believe that most everyone knows that among the amazing things that he did in a storied career, he is most popularly known as the father of the modern field guide. When it comes to the Roger Tory Peterson Institute, some of you might not be as familiar with RTPI, especially since we have approved just this year a brand new strategic plan. So we consider ourselves now the living embodiment of the Peterson Field Guide. And what do we mean by that? So like the Field Guide, we believe we are, in fact, a trusted source of information, inspiration, and illumination about the natural world that we love. And also, like the Field Guide, we use primarily art as the lens through which to engage with you, to help share and illuminate about the beauty and wonder of the natural world, but to go deeper, to also look and take a clear-eyed look at the challenges that nature is facing, and then go further still and remind all of us that art itself can be a powerful tool to help heal the natural world and to reveal that so many around the world are engaged in stewardship and restoration and protection to, again, to help protect and steward and nurture and protect the nature that we love. And our current exhibition now on display at RTPI through October 25th, so just about 2 more weeks. It is entitled Art That Matters to the Planet. And Art That Matters to the Planet is a juried exhibition of the Society of Animal Artists. And we have on display 60 artworks from artists, world-class artists from throughout the United States and Canada and as far away as Sweden, New Zealand, Spain, and other countries. And again, each of these artworks is an exquisitely crafted, beautiful, artistic work of art. But again, it goes deeper. Each of these artworks also is that window, that door to help surface and explore and share what inspired our artists to respond to some of the critical conservation issues of the age. And here we have a few. We have those responding to climate change and habitat loss, pollution, and the illegal wildlife trade. And it's difficult always. A lot of people ask, what's your favorite artwork in the exhibition? And it's like, which of your children do you love best, right? But this artwork in particular really caught my attention, and I'll explain why. So this is by Jenna Quinn Lewis. And at first it's just a beautiful image of a bird and it looks like it's sleeping. And then you approach and you think that, well, maybe not sleeping because it doesn't look like it's positioned quite right. And you look at the foot and it's kind of curled there. And then you happen to glance at the title. And this is the title of this work, Window Strike. And by each of the artworks that are on display, we have an artist statement that talks a little bit about what moved the artist to create this particular work. And this is what Ms. Lewis had to say about this particular work. What I'm going to emphasize there, this is about migrating birds who deal with tall buildings, glass, and lights. And this image really kind of struck me because it reminded me of this image. And this is a photograph that I took several years ago on the 26th floor of the Jewelers Building in downtown Chicago. So for those of you who might not be up on your Chicago architecture, well, you're in for a double treat. I'm going to give you a little history here. So the Jewelers Building is one of Chicago's iconic early skyscrapers. And when it was built in 1926, 28, it was, again, depending on which source you read, either the first or the second tallest building in the world, second only to those that were in New York City. But time marches on, and soon this building was not the tallest building in Chicago anymore. As a matter of fact, the Jewelers Building doesn't even crack the top 100 of the tallest buildings in the city of Chicago. As you can see here, it really is dwarfed by its neighbors, and it's also different from its neighbors because the modern skyscraper typically, rather than being stone clad or terracotta clad, so you've got more sort of physicalness to the buildings, more of the modern skyscrapers are constructed of steel and glass, or you might even say in a practical way for birds anyways, steel and windows. And I use this image because this also underscores a critical issue we want to talk about tonight, which is the lights of the big cities. And I think we all have to admit that this is just a beautiful image, right? We love our cities for these glittering lights. It's beautiful, attractive, it's wonderful. It's kind of a monument, a testament to the beauty that we can create in the world. But we also know now that these kinds of big city lights, these kinds of things are also death traps for birds. Depending on which source you reference, but by and large, we're in the ballpark of every year, 1 billion birds die from crashing into buildings. So that is billion with a B. That's a lot of birds that die from crashing into buildings every year. And a large part of the reason that they do is because of the lights. So I'm not going to get into the science of it. There's a lot of good information out there, and we'll be happy to share some of those resources for you. And in part, we're still learning exactly why it is that lights so disrupt birds in the migrations. But think about it this way. If you entered a dark room and someone shined a bright light into your face, I mean, you would be absolutely blinded and be bumping around the room. So now imagine someone shining 1,000, a billion, a billion lights in your eyes. Just, that's going to disorient everyone, and birds especially. Think of a small migrating warbler coming up from Central America. It starts out weighing less than a first-class envelope to begin with. It's probably lost 1/3 of its body weight by the time it gets to Chicago. It's hungry, it's tired, it's thirsty, and it gets to Chicago and bam, all those lights, right? So really small wonder then that so many birds end up then crashing into these buildings. Or I think even more tragic is that it's so disoriented, the lights can be so disorienting that there are birds that will just circle some of these tall buildings with the big light, and they'll circle and circle almost like moths around a bare light bulb on a back porch until these birds, just exhausted, fall to the earth and die. So on the 26th floor of the Jewelers Building, every spring and every fall, I started my day by collecting the birds that crashed into our building. And on the 26th floor, we actually had an outdoor deck that went virtually 360 around the entire building. So everything that hit above our floor, then I would collect. And some of the birds that you find, it has that, they almost look like they're sleeping, right? And it's kind of sort of lovely and poetic and charming. But the more you find, then we start to see more evidence of the violence that these birds suffer when they crash into the buildings. You know, the feathers get ruffled, the eyes remain open. Oftentimes they're exploded with the impact of the collision. Their bodies are in extended positions that don't look obviously like they had a good end. If you don't find birds right away, nature starts to take its course. And here we have even common blue jays that end up crashing into buildings. And part of the experience of collecting these birds, it provides an opportunity, on the one hand, to have a deeper appreciation of the beauty of these birds. And when you get to hold these birds in your hand, and honest to goodness, sometimes they would still be warm in your hands when you picked them up in the morning. But you could see the structure of the feathers and get a real close-up view and see the beauty of the patterning. And just, again, something as common as a blue jay, you could just stare at the beauty of this feather for hours, right? But then you look at the other side and we also get to see this, and again, remind us of the violence suffered by these birds as they crash headlong into the buildings and just literally knock the tongues out of their mouths. So my doing this is part of a larger effort. This is the Chicago Bird Collision Monitors. And just this afternoon, it was interesting, we had some visitors from Cleveland, and we have someone who might even be joining us this evening, but they do this program in Cleveland. So it was interesting to learn about these other programs throughout the country. But basically in Chicago, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning, every spring, every fall, there is a small army of volunteers that go out through the city and collect the dead birds that died overnight. And they also then, on occasion, will find injured birds or live birds that happen to be stunned. And we also collect these birds and bring them to a rehab center. And many of those birds do in fact recover and are in fact then able to continue the migration. But if we didn't collect these live birds, oftentimes they would become victims of seagulls and rats and other things looking for an easy meal. And if you've got a stunned songbird, that's just a tasty snack to a rat. So we are out there doing what we can to protect those birds and to give them an opportunity to continue on. And so the virtue of these programs is that over time, you can begin to collect a lot of data. So here's a short list of the top birds that most often are found that crash into buildings. And here we have a brown creeper. And here we have an example of a yellow-bellied sapsucker. And I think this is a hermit thrush. I am perfectly willing to be corrected if it's a different kind of thrush. But anyways, this is another kind of bird that does, with too often frequency, crash into buildings. What do we do with all these buildings then? Well, we bag them up for scientific purposes. So we put these birds into plastic bags and we include the date, where they were collected, the name of the species, and also the person that collected the bird. And we collect a number at the time, and at the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation and other places, we don't bring them on a daily basis, but we put them in the freezer, which is the best practice. But a word to the wise, if you do this in your own office, please make sure that all your office mates know that you have dead birds stored in the freezer, because if someone goes looking for their lean cuisine and finds these instead, it can be a little arresting if they're not prepared. So make sure your fellow office mates know what they're going to go and find in the freezer. So we find all these birds, and we find lots of birds. And then we ultimately bring them to the Field Museum. And this is our partner in Chicago. And the Field Museum is an exceptional treasure trove of all things natural history. And they have one of the greater research programs for ornithology. And what we do with these birds is that we do lots of different things. And one of the cool things I love about the Field Museum is they have a great partnership with the School of the Art Institute. And they have a lot of art students who participate in this program and help with preparing birds in lots of different ways. So some are prepared to study skins, others are, their feathers are taken off and the meat off the bones, and they're stored in all different kinds of other ways. for a variety of research purposes. So we can better understand birds over the history of 150 years that the Field Museum has been collecting this information. Here we have an example of the study skins that are prepared. So everything that isn't feather and skins is taken out of the birds, and you can preserve these skins in perpetuity. And some of the birds, again, in the Field Museum collection and other collections, were collected in the early 1800s, and they're preserved and they still provide great scientific information for researchers today. There's over 500,000 study skins in the Field Museum collection, making it one of the largest in the country. I had learned this just by the by. I didn't know that my small contribution to science was that my name was going to continue on with some of these specimens. So here, for various research purposes, these birds are just basically boiled down to their bones and then stored in this way. So this too is another way that the collection grows and expands. And those who participate in this get to add their own citizen science contribution to ornithological research. So I want to return quickly to this image of the flicker. And Roger Tory Peterson, I think as a lot of folks know, was those who really popularized and democratized bird watching, and in part by the exquisite beauty of these birds. And I used this image of the flicker, which adorned one version of his field guide, because the story for Roger, what got Roger interested in bird watching, was a flicker. So Roger grew up here in Jamestown, New York, which is why the RTPI is situated here. And Roger was an 11-year-old kid, very precocious, and loved to scavenge the woods here for moths and trees and plants and anything he could. And he loved birds. And one day, this 11-year-old kid sees this tree, and there's a clump of feathers on the side of the tree. And it wasn't moving. And it was a bird, but was it alive? Was it dead? And so just imagine being an 11-year-old kid and creeping up, and he put his finger out, and he actually touched that clump of feathers. And it was a bird, and it was a very alive bird that just burst away in this flutter of golden wing beats. And it turned out to be a northern flicker. And Roger points back to that, and he said from that moment on, he was hooked. So this too is memorialized in a book that we have for sale in our gift shop by Peggy Tomics and Laura Jakes, which talks about Roger as a young kid exploring the woods and having this beautiful flicker moment. And I was reminded of this because looking through the images, I sort of had my own flicker moment looking through the images. So again, a lot of the songbirds that come through, they are very small, and when you hold them in your hands, and even if they're warm, you can almost feel like there's nothing there. They're so light. But a flicker has a little more substance. It's a bigger bird, and it has a little more weight, and of course the exceptional beauty of it. And you can't help but be moved by the tragedy when you hold that in your hands. So it gets you thinking, what can I do to help protect these birds migrating through Chicago and elsewhere? What can we do to help make for a safer passage of birds? So in Chicago, we're fortunate that even though we still have bird strikes, because we still have skyscrapers, and that's always going to happen to some degree, there are things that we can do to mitigate the damage. And one of the better things that we can do is we can turn out the lights. So this has been going on in Chicago for many, many years now. And this is basically just during spring and fall migrations, during certain hours, you turn off the big lights. So on top of Sears Tower and the John Hancock Center and all those big iconic buildings that look beautiful when they're lit up, but a voluntary program, people turn off the lights to mitigate the amount of disruption from migrating songbirds through Chicago. It helps. It helps lower the number of birds that are striking buildings and dying as a result of that. And so this is an Audubon program, and it's adopted by the city of Chicago. And it's great that we have a city that is committed to being a bird-friendly community. So in addition to the Lights Out program, we have a very strong natural areas protection program along the lakefront. We have designated important bird areas. So between providing habitat, turning off the lights, and many other things like that, we are a vital, vibrant city for people, and we are a bird-friendly city for those critters that we share and that migrate as they pass through north and south. So as I mentioned, this is an Audubon program, and the first one was in Toronto, and then Chicago was the second one, and I'm kind of proud of that, being a hometown kid. But look at all the programs that now are existing across the country. So this is right off the Audubon website. You can just look down the list here. There are a lot of places that get it, and they're doing what they can as a community to lessen the negative impact upon birds, so that perhaps one day it's not 1 billion birds that die, perhaps it's a lower number. And this is something that we as a community can do. So right here in Western New York, this is an opportunity for us. And I'm really excited to move to this community and be a part of a vibrant cultural community and conservation community that is interested and on this. And again, doing what we can do together to help make the passage of birds better. So with this, I am going to pass this off. I'm going to stop sharing screen, and Ed and Jay are going to take the wheel and take you home. So you guys ready?
Thank you. I'll connect over and just see if I can share my screen here.
While you're doing that, man, that was a very powerful program. It was awe-inspiring, what the images are that we saw of the tragedies and the beautiful art that you guys are doing. So thanks for that. That was a joy to listen to.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks.
Yeah, Arthur, just a quick background here. I'm also new to the world of birding. While I did in my younger days have a chance to work with Roger and Virginia and did some of the advertising work for the RTPI, my career took me towards marketing and advertising for consumers and other businesses. And so when I sold that company, I came back to Buffalo, and now I'm having the opportunity to be the executive director at the Buffalo Audubon, and thrilled to death to have the chance to work with a guy like Jay Burney, who is one of the leading conservationists and naturalists in our area. There's very few people who have the dedication and length of service that he does to our region. So I will primarily have the opportunity to share this presentation through Jay's eyes. I did want to let people who are visiting this presentation tonight, first of all, thank you for joining us. And second of all, the Buffalo Audubon is an Audubon society, but we're an independent chapter of the National Audubon. So we definitely are connected to National Audubon. I'm actually a board member of the Western New York and the New York chapters as well. But I want you to know that we're dedicated to connect and protect the natural world through our mission is through activities, advocacy, and habitat restoration, primarily bird-focused activities. And our vision is to try to connect communities where birds and people live and flourish together. So the most recent opportunity for us to connect with Arthur has been great, because we're beginning to connect as the entire flyway that we're supposed to be taking care of from the Pennsylvania border to the Canadian border. And you'll learn through Jay that we even extend our reach into the Canadian border, working with our Canadian partners. So without saying much else, I just want to say again, thank you. And if you are ever interested in knowing more about this work through us, we would be thrilled to have your support and your volunteer or any kind of input that you're willing to share with us as we venture into this journey of building a robust lights out program for the Niagara corridor and for Western New York. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay.
All right, thank you, Ed. I just want to start by saying we're going to do this. We're going to end up with a lights out region. We've been building partnerships and relationships and messaging for a lot of years, and it started to accelerate because the catastrophe that we're facing is starting to accelerate, or has been accelerating and is accelerating even more. We're going to do it because of dedicated people like, I think, everyone here listening tonight, and so many other people that we get to talk to about this. Let's go to the next slide, Ed. So this is our region. This is our region at night, and it's different nights. Cloud cover makes it almost all bright, opaque. But these are lights that impact all of nature. And birds are a big part of the nature that we have here in our region, in Buffalo, Western New York, Jamestown, and the Great Lakes. And this is killing birds. Let's go to the next slide. It's also killing humans. I'll tell you about that more in a few seconds. You may have seen these statistics since 1970. 2.9 billion birds have vanished from the planet. That's the overall species on the planet. And that's down about 30% in 50 years. That's a remarkable number of birds that are vanishing. That's extinction. And the extinctions are accelerating all across the board. And, you know, birds are there. And we can learn about birds and maybe do something about birds. At least we can understand some of the things that are killing them. And lights are a big, big, big issue. Let's try the next slide. One of the things that's really neat about our area in the Niagara River corridor, it's an important bird area. It's a globally significant important bird area. It's the first internationally recognized globally significant important bird area. It's an important bird area because of its location. Birds migrate through here all seasons, 24, hours a day, 7 days a week. And some stay here, some breed here. But birds that come from places as far away as the Arctic, the Amazon basin, Central America, the Caribbean, and Mexico, and the far boreal west coast of the United States, they come through here and they become a part of our ecosphere, part of our ecosystems. And they all need our area, the Niagara River corridor in the Great Lakes. They need our area to survive. And so let's go to the next slide. And so as we are learning about what we can do, we've known that lights are a big issue, and fatal light attraction, which is a syndrome that causes anthropomorphic light, causes nature to change dramatically, whether it's a plant or a pollinator or a mammal or us. Birds are killed by it. And we talked about this a little bit earlier about these terrible collisions that they have. And according to the US Department of Agriculture, 500 million to 1 billion birds annually perish in the United States because of these collisions. Now, those birds that you saw photographs in the previous presentation, 500 million to 1 billion of them in the United States annually to collisions. We have a big problem, and it's like I said, it's accelerating. Let's go to the next slide. Here we go. So City of Buffalo, you come down from space and you get down in the earth and you're out on Lake Erie. That's what Buffalo looks like. What are we doing about those lights? Well, Buffalo Audubon and the birds on the Niagara, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, have formed partnerships to start working on policies that will affect, well, the city of Buffalo. Let's go to the next slide. This is Buffalo's outer harbor. Let's go to the next slide. This is also Buffalo. This is the entryway to the Niagara River corridor, globally significant important bird area. This is what birds deal with when they are migrating through this area. And it's not just Buffalo, it's the entire Niagara River corridor. And we have lots of urbanized areas there. It's all lit up all the way up. Let's go to the next slide. So a few years ago in 2015, we were working with the state, and New York City Audubon in particular came up with a policy that was adopted by Governor Cuomo, and it's a lights out policy for New York. And it's to protect migratory birds. And this is a governor's proclamation, a governor's policy. And that basically was during certain hours, during certain migration periods, spring and fall primarily, turn the lights out. This is the same kind of thing that we were hearing about in Chicago. We had one in New York State. We're trying to make that something that should be part of how we're looking at the cities and city policies. At least look at this that the state has done. And if you're a state building, and we've had some success. We've turned out some of those lights that you saw, the grain elevators that have that wonderful light show. We've had them turned out during migration seasons. But a big problem has occurred with this policy. It's disappeared. We have a new governor, and the website that had this announcement on it is gone. There's no clue about this policy, and I've been reaching out to my legislators, my state senators, to try to find out what's going on. And nobody knows what's going on yet, but we have to bring it back. We have to make sure it's still a state policy. And I'm going to reach out to all of you and call out to all of you that as we develop some sort of initiative to get to the governor, she lives near me, we're going to need to make this seem like it's a mistake not to have it as a visible state policy. Next one, Ed. One of the things that we've talked about, and this is an anecdotal story, we've had some conversations with Niagara Falls about their lights. Obviously, Niagara Falls is the centerpiece of a tourism event like the Birds of the Niagara. And so we're working with Niagara Falls, working with state parks, but they have this incredible light show, which is very beautiful. And so, we said, hey, what can we do to get you to turn your lights out during migration season? And they said, when's migration season? And we said, it's in April to late May and September to, mid-November. They said, what do you mean turn the lights out? I said, turn the lights out. It didn't go very far. However, we subsequently learned that in New York City, in the 9/11 exhibit, they show these beams of light that go to space. And New York City Audubon, which did the lights out New York policy, said, how can we get you to turn them out, or at least turn them out in intervals? And back and forth, ultimately, this short side of the story is someone came up with a plan to do science. And the science is they'll measure, look at the birds that are in there during the light beams, they'll turn. Did I get muted? So anyway, so a science program was adopted by the 9/11 Commission, and they did science and they showed what happened in those light beams to the birds when they're on and when they're off. We brought this idea to the Niagara Falls Lighting Commission, and they said, well, how would we do the science? I don't know, but if we did the science and if we marketed it, you'd get press all over the world, because this would be an incredible accomplishment in the chase to find a way to get lights out and protect birds. So they said, okay, put a proposal together. And so that's what we're doing now, is trying to put a proposal together. We are putting a proposal together to use science. We've got to find money and things like that. But these are the kinds of programs that we're doing. Let's go to the next slide. This is downtown Buffalo on a foggy night. This is Canal Side. And that fog amplifies light pollution. And this is during April, late April. So that's the kind of scenario you have there. Next one. So I'm going to turn this back over to Ed. We had a partnership page here for Birds of the Niagara. It doesn't seem to be here anymore. Okay, here it is. I will do this then. Birds of the Niagara. It's going to our 4th year. It's a February event. It's over Valentine's Day weekend. We're celebrating what we have there. We have incredible birds in the wintertime. We have waterfowl, almost 40 species that come from the north. This is traditionally their first open water. So there's habitat here, there's food here. They're here, and they're here in breeding plumage, and they're doing courtship, and it happens around Valentine's Day. And so we said, let's talk about conservation, let's talk about the birds, and let's try to attract people with some fun ideas. Valentine's Day, romance. So we're trying to bring romance back into birding, and we have a great opportunity because these birds are doing courtship activities. We have partners, international partners, nature organizations in Canada and the US, agencies, big ones like Audubon and Birds Canada. And the Lights Out initiative is something that we are working on together. If you go to our website, birdsoftheniagara.org, you will find a way to find our programming from last year, and we have video recordings of all of our programs, and we have a bird-friendly city program, a biophilic city program, a fatal light awareness program from Toronto, which was talked about earlier. And if you want to learn more about our Lights Out stuff, please go to our website. and take a look at them. And I guess we'll answer questions also very happily if you have any. But we're having another festival this year, and we think we're going to have it in person. And we just got news yesterday that the borders may be open, so we can truly have a cross-border celebration of birds conservation. And we also have a social justice component. So birdsofniagara.org. I think that that's basically my presentation, unless there's another slide that I don't remember. Yeah. Ed, you want to wrap this up?
Sure, Jay, thank you. I would love to invite anybody who would want to attend the 2 or 3 days up at the Sheridan in Niagara Falls. It's a wonderful event that will have 30 or 40 different seminars, sponsorships from companies like Swarovski and Nikon and others to help you learn more about birding. We'll have tours of birding on the Niagara, tours of Niagara Falls. The Sheridan is a beautiful hotel. It's connected directly to one of the casinos. So if you're cold from birding and you want to warm up and try your luck at blackjack, you can do that as well. We most importantly want you to understand that we're in the very early stages of trying to create a lights out program in Buffalo. And it seems almost crazy that Toronto has it, Chicago has it, Cleveland has it, even Pittsburgh has it. I mean, all of these cities that wrap the Great Lakes into Canada are doing lights out and taking care of birds. And we're right in the middle, as Jay said, of the Atlantic Flyway and taking care of a very, very important segment of the Atlantic Flyway from the Pennsylvania border to the Canadian border. We are, those of you who are in the Jamestown area know how busy Chautauqua Lake is, and the wetlands around Chautauqua and the wetlands around the Jamestown Audubon are, everything from eagles to all of the migratory birds, all of the wetland birds, the songbirds. I was in Chautauqua yesterday briefly, and was able to see loons and great blue herons and eagles, and it's an amazing resource for migratory birds. So we have got a huge area to take care of, from Jamestown along the Chautauqua Lake to Lake Erie, up to the Niagara River, all the way up to Lewiston and beyond into the Lake Ontario. And we need to understand one city at a time, from Jamestown to Fredonia to Dunkirk to Silver Creek, and all the way up to Buffalo and on up to Grand Island and Niagara Falls, that just doing lights out in one of those communities would be helpful, but doing lights out across our entire Western New York is really the goal that we're trying to shoot for. So it's a long road ahead for us, but one that we know is really important. And I'm thrilled to death to have the chance to work with the RTPI and others, the partners that Jay shared with you, to hopefully achieve this goal of getting a lights out program, especially during migratory periods. And with that, I'll leave it back to Arthur and open it for questions if that's where you'd like to go, Arthur.
Thanks. So if we can stop sharing, and then I can open up my whole Zoom and see if we have any questions in chat. So I'm taking a look here. And we must be excellent presenters because I don't see any questions in chat. So I'm also going to invite, if folks have questions, if you want to unmute and just ask your question, please feel free that way as well. So assuming that people are busily typing, I've got a question for Ed and Jay. So what are the barriers that you're encountering? Well, is it at the council level? Is it at the community support level? Have you been able to put your finger on whatever the succession of steps is, or constituent groups that you need to bring in? What's the barrier, and what might the opportunities be to start to address those?
Well, that's a big question. And the bottom line is human engagement. engagement of citizens, engagement of students, engagement of families, engagement of professionals. Building the knowledge of the importance of these issues is a difficult task in 2021. It's always been a difficult task, but if you can find people, you can talk about it. But people constantly ask me, why are birds important? We deal with a lot of building collision issues and development issues, and people say birds will fly around it, they'll fly under the Peace Bridge, they'll whatever, they'll do it, or they're too stupid. And so starting with that, and that's a constant part of our media, the general media. It's a lack of respect of nature, lack of an understanding of nature. And it's almost worse than that. It's almost still colonialism kind of concept of, who cares about nature? Well, we have to change people's perception. So once you get there, then you get to elected officials, and sometimes staffers in various kinds of agencies understand this stuff. We have a local state agency in Buffalo that really wants to push this, but the Albany version is kind of like, slow down, don't worry about it, don't do it, because we have to think it out politically. So working through that. Now, that said, we have developed a lot of relationships in the last couple of years as we've done BON, and as we've done more bird education, and as we've done different outer harbor issues. We're building a constituency, and that is getting to the elected officials. And we have a couple of elected officials that are really behind us and really helping us, state level, and a couple city level, City of Buffalo, Niagara Falls, Grand Island. So we just have to keep doing the work, and it's hard work and it's relentless. So that's the answer.
So I think a couple of weeks we'll have this nut cracked. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm ready to go home.
So we had a nice comment from, I had mentioned that there were some visitors at RTPI from the Lights Out Cleveland program. So Joy and Greg were on the presentation. So thank you guys for joining us, and they love the presentation. So if Cleveland can do it, by gum, right? We have a comment here from Mona, and the question is, are there additional environmental groups that you can be partnered with to help advance things? So in addition to the partners that were listed on the Niagara program, are there others that need and should be involved in this? The Nature Conservancy, NRDC, are there some of the other big guns that might be advocates and partners in this?
Ed, you want to do this one? You want me to answer?
Sure. I mean, I think, I want to tackle this in two ways. First and foremost, I think that, Arthur, to be brutally honest, the Buffalo Audubon Society has not focused or tackled this challenge head on until recently. So I would say that groups like Cleveland's Lights Out programs, yours in Chicago, Toronto's, and others have been much farther advanced in marshaling troops, gathering resources, funding, and then attacking the building owners, the governmental organizations, the private organizations that need to participate to make it come to fruition. So we recognize we have, as an organization, are probably still at bat, or haven't even got the ball into play to get to first base on this process. So with your help at RTPI, your experience, and certainly now Jay joining the Buffalo Audubon board with his experience, it's going to shift into a new gear. And we believe that working with our partners through the with the Birds of the Niagara program, as well as all those partners, we think we can take it to the next level. This is a huge deal for us at Buffalo Audubon. We've moved it to one of the top priorities of our organization. This advocacy work that needs to get done is a complete priority. And I would love to know why some of these people who've joined this presentation tonight are here. I mean, are there people here who we can tap into or who would like to help join with us in the work? I see one of the questions was, did we connect with the DEC? I talk to the DEC right now daily with regards to a program that we're working on called Turn Island. It's an island that was built in Niagara River to to take care of the common tern and the Caspian tern populations. It was very successful as the first year it was there. The DEC is connected to us at the hip, but have yet to really push a Lights Out program forward. So I think a lot is going to depend on pulling these organizations together and then getting the funding and building the awareness, the education of building owners, government, and private citizens to say, hey, between this time and this time, twice a year, we can turn the lights off, you know, to protect birds. And I think we'll feel better about it as a community, as a region, as conservationists, especially, you know, in a very heightened time where climate change and the effects of climate change are having such a major effect on people's wallets, say nothing about people's lives.
Right. Thanks, Ed. And so for those who have an interest in reaching directly to Audubon, can you just remind us of your website address again?
Ours is buffaloaudubon.org.
Simple enough. And we're at rtpi.org. If you want to contact us, and we can happy to pass on information to Ed as well. So there's another, go ahead, please, Jay.
Birdsontheniagara.org too.
Thank you. Thank
Hey,
you very
can
much.
I just add, can I add to Ed's answer just briefly?
Yeah, please, yes.
So, you know, you asked about the DEC, and, you know, when I said earlier, there's a state agency with local employees that really are behind this. I was talking about the DEC, so I wasn't going to mention them, but that's who they are. We also have partners is so important, and you ask if we work with partners or try to reach out to partners. Yeah, that's so much of our mission. BON has international partners, and Audubon is part of BON. We also are part of another big organization called the Western New York Environmental Alliance, which has over 100 environmental organizations that are members, and they're all into this, and they're hosting a biophilic cities campaign that goes out through their network. And I think RTPI is part of that. So that's sorry.
Good. So there's another question here. It gets into some technical things. Is there a height at which most birds strike buildings? In other words, would it be any easier to convince authorities to participate in Lights Out if it was targeted above a certain floor height? And Jay, I see you started to weigh in, so I'm going to throw that question to you, if I may.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I know you've got answers. And you know, kudos to Lights Out Cleveland. Thanks for being here, and thanks for doing all that work. I think that, you know, buildings are complicated, and the height matters for sure. So does location. So does what kind of glass there's on it, what kind of lights. And so it matters. And I try to say that it's inappropriate to have taller glass lit structures near pathways, migratory birdways like shorelines. But, you know, if it's in the middle of the city, it still matters. So what I work on, and I've done this with the city of Buffalo with a green code, is what are the lighting standards for these buildings? And I worked for 2 years to help create a lighting standards, which are pretty good, that can be translated in a lot of places, but they still got tamped down at the end. So we still have to work on those kinds of things, and glass standards. How do you treat glass on a building? I mean, there's bird-friendly glass buildings. They're not that much more expensive, but design is everything.
So I would add too, and some of these questions came into us when we first announced this program. It's like, what about the birds that hit my picture window at home? Do birds crash into small buildings as well? And they do. And so the question arose, what can individuals do to protect birds just in their own backyard at home? So I think the best resource that we found and we suggest would be the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the American Birding Association. So if you just look up those organizations or keyword bird strike, Cornell, bird strike, ABA, they'll take you directly to their websites and they'll get some information. So is it effective to put a decal on your window of a hawk? Is that effective? Is that not effective? Are there other things you can do? And so they do a pretty good rundown of what the options are and what birds might be looking for and what is likely to deter birds. So around your own home, if you're finding that you've got some birds that are hitting windows regularly, check out those websites. That's just another little thing that each of us individually can do to help make the passage of birds a little easier. I think we've got another question here Do we have any compelling research about the efficacy of films on buildings? What about decals? Well, I was just speaking to that a little bit. So again, we do have science, we do have research on it. And I'm glad you guys mentioned science and research. Sometimes that can be a dirty word in the world in which we live. But without science, I think we're all sort of a little bit at sea. For all that we know, there's still a lot that we don't know, but let's put what we do know to the best and highest use. So again, Cornell is a pretty good go-to resource for us, American Birding Association. They're among our leading lights. I go to the Field Museum in Chicago, I know it well. We've got the New York, Museum of Natural History. We have leading experts, people who spend their careers building upon the careers of others, standing on the shoulders of giants in ornithological research. We know a lot, let's gather it and let's put it together to see if we can help make this better world. Any other thoughts on that in terms of the decals on windows or what we can do at home?
I'd love to hear what Cleveland, if they're still here, has to say about that, because they've got a program. I'm not exactly sure if it's Ohio Lights Out or Lights Out Cleveland. I've seen the website, but what if the Cleveland team from Lights Out is still on? Can you share with us what your findings are about that question?
I think they might have stepped off here. So we're going to have to take a road trip to Cleveland and go figure out what's going on, which actually is another thing that I might just add. And I'm sure you guys have talked about this. And again, I'm sort of the new kid on the block, but how did the other cities do it? What were the key points that were necessary in their particular circumstances to get this across the finish line? And what's then portable to our circumstances? To what extent do legislators and representatives and councilmen in other cities, can we do a peer-to-peer exchange? Yeah, we do this, and you know what? The economic engine kept working in Chicago and Cleveland and elsewhere, in spite of the fact that we dimmed the lights. I think that's what drives a lot of these decisions. We do the big lights because it's beautiful. We do the big lights for tourism. And if we turn them off for 5 minutes, we're losing money. Is that actually the case? I think there might be some research to be done there. And again, talking to peers in other cities, hey, did you really lose a lot of money? You know what? We really didn't so much. It just might be helpful for them to hear it from peers as opposed to advocates. Just another thought. So we've got one more question here. We've got, we're not experts in Cleveland, only volunteers, which I consider expert, by the way, but you can contact Matt Schumer, who handles the state of Ohio. Thank you. So we have a contact for that. Thank you very much, Joy. Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about at the end of the time, and I think we've just about exhausted our questions. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to Jay for all the extraordinary work that you do, Ed for jumping into the fray on this. Your leadership is critical. It's essential to helping to galvanize all of us here in Western New York for a better nature, a healthier bird community, which in turn translates to a healthier, happier human community. And I really do believe that. Thanks to all of you for jumping on the call with us. I know that there's a lot of great programs that Audubon is doing. Please go check out their website. If you want to see our current exhibition, you've got just 2 weeks to come see it. It closes on the 25th, but don't worry, on November 5th, we're opening a brand new exhibition of the photographs of Thomas Mengelson. And if you want to be inspired by some of the greatest places in the world, we're going to have magnificent 9-foot canvases of his extraordinary photographs on display through the holidays. So please come down and enjoy us. And buy this great book that we got for kids that tells about the great experiences that Roger had as a kid. Okay, commercial stuff aside, thank you all so much. Great to have you here. We look forward to seeing you all in person real soon. Take care, all.
Thank you, Arthur.
Bye-bye.
Bye.